Hello, 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 and welcome to the Shelly Show. I'm Shailendra, and you're watching the simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and a few other channels today. So we are going live on many channels today. So I hope you are safe and observing the protocols in your area so that we keep each other healthy, safe, and secure. For you to view this episode and other sessions that are run on emerging technologies live, I would request you to follow me so that you can be alerted when a live session is on. On the other hand, no matter which channel you're watching this, I would request you to follow that particular channel so that you get to know what's going on and you find more information from those guys. Following me gives you an opportunity to directly ask the questions from our guests. So please press the follow button on LinkedIn and Twitter, subscribe button on YouTube, and if you're watching this now, then please say a hi and let us know which city you're joining us from, which country, which city you're joining us from now. Okay, and if you've got any question, please put that question in the comment section and we will take them in the audience Q&A section. Okay, guys? Thank you very much for joining. For everyone who's seen my videos and on AI, the one specifically at the beginning of 2022, I mentioned that there will be more than $62 billion of investment in the AI space. So I thought of starting a new series called AI Insights, where I'll bring together thought leaders from around the world to help our audience understand how AI is going to impact in different industries, learn use cases, techniques, the ecosystem, and much more. You'll also get to know a few thought leaders in the AI space. Today, we're going to talk about financial services as there is a lot of discussion around AI in FS with neobanks, fintechs, digital banking, and all that thing happening at the same time. So let me not waste any time and quickly bring guests to you. My first guest is Utpal Chakraborty. He is an eminent data scientist, AI researcher, strategist, and thought leader with more than 2 decades of industry experience, including as a principal architect at L&T Infotech, IBM, Capgemini, and other MNCs. Of late, he was the head of artificial intelligence division at Yes Bank. Currently, he is the Chief Digital Officer at Allied Digital Services. Utpal is a well-known speaker and an author of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, IoT, as well as agile and lean learning. He's spoken at many conferences around the world. Utpal has been recognized as one of the top AI influencers and thought leaders by reputed firms. So without any further ado, let me bring in Utpal.
Thank you. Thank you, Shailendra. Thank you so much. And I'm really excited and glad to be part of this particular show. So your shows are very, very popular. I have seen that. And it's really exciting for me to be part of this show along with other very eminent personalities. Thank you so much.
Good stuff. So, Utpal, one question that I always ask my guests: tell us one unique thing about you which not many people know.
Yeah. So as I've been doing a job from last 20 25 years. So but one thing that I also do along with my job is some research work. So some R&D work into different technologies like AI and also very recently on quantum. So that is something unique I do apart from my normal job.
Good stuff. Okay, so let's not waste any time. Let's get the other guests as well. Our second guest is Imtiaz Adam. Imtiaz is the founder of an AI startup, Deep Learn Strategies Limited, and we will want to know more about that as we bring him in. It is working on applications of AI towards fintech, ESG, and metaverse development. He's ranked as the leading AI influencer and serves on the advisory board of MarketTechPost.com, where he is also a guest author to various articles and a guest editor, and has spoken at various AI conferences, including at World Economic Forum at Davos. So without any further ado, let me bring in Imtiaz. Hi,
Hello,
Imtiaz.
Shailendra. Pleasure to
Welcome
be
to the
here.
show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Great to be with Utpal as well.
Good stuff. So tell one funny thing about you which not many people know.
A fun thing, gosh, I mean, I don't know. Before the days of COVID, I used to dance at advanced level, Latin dance, and do a lot of martial arts, etc. And I speak 6 languages.
Whoa,
Uh,
6 languages, martial arts, and salsa dance, is it?
Salsa and samba.
Salsa and samba both. Brilliant, mate. You are awesome. You've got too much of time up your sleeve. We don't get much time. Good stuff. Okay, let me get the third guest as well very quickly, and and I'll start the conversation. So, our third guest is Tony Boobier from UK as well. Tony has worked in the financial services sector for nearly 4 decades. Based in London, he now spends his time as an independent consultant, advisory board member, personal mentor, and author. He's internationally recognized thought leader and has published 3 books: Analytics for Insurance, The Real World of Big Data, Advanced Analytics and AI, Impact, Implementation, and Future of Work. So let's bring him in first. And he's about to publish his 4th book. So let's ask him about that. Here we go. And we bring in Tony. Hi, Tony. How are you going?
Hey, Shally, I'm very well and delighted to be on the call this morning or this evening or
Good stuff.
wherever you are.
So, Tony, tell us a fun thing about you and the 4th book that you're writing.
Oh, kind of a fun thing. Since leaving corporate life 5 years ago and working for myself, I've been spending a lot of time writing. And although you mentioned previous publications and the one which will come out this year, during lockdown, I actually wrote an autobiography, really for the grandchildren as much as anything. And when I showed it to the kids, or my grown-up kids, they said, "You know, Dad, this reads like a... What we really want to know is why did you make the decisions you made?" And gee, that was such a hard question. And I would really love any of you to answer the question, why do you do things? That's one to think about, guys.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, very quickly, let's jump into it. So today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence in financial services. So let's start with few interesting use cases that we've seen in the financial services space. We can talk about banking, insurance, wealth management, fintech, whatever it is. Utpal, I'll start with you. You've spent most of your life at least last few years in the financial services space. So any unique use case that comes to your mind that you think you wanted to share with the audience?
Absolutely. Thank you, Shailendra. So, yes, I was part of a bank for a couple of years, but before that, also, in most of my career, I have been serving different financial clients. So that includes different banks from across the globe. And you said correctly. So there are many known use cases like credit risk assessment kind of use cases, which most of the banks has already been implemented. And I think many banks even in India also they implement that because although we have got a credit scoring mechanism which is given by some of the firms like Civil or Experian or some other firms, but each bank has their own appetite of this credit risks, and so they learn a lot of machine learning model on the demographic, financial, and transactional data of customers to find out what is the risks involved giving a credit to a customer or an entity. So that is one use case which is very known to most of the banks and purely machine learning use case. Very recently, I have also seen some of the very nice use cases. Like one of them is like from the customer service conversation. Okay, how essentially you can identify the cross sell and upsell opportunities. Okay, so this is something of interest for the bank. So they will real time monitor the customer service interaction with the customers and with and they use technologies like NLP, machine learning, and some other deep learning models also, and try to find out within the conversation, is there any cross-sell and upsell opportunity? And then probably they can contact the customer with those kind of offers and notifications. So that is another use case which is very, very important. Uh, Very recently, because what we have seen is like how the journey started in India. At least I'll talk a little bit on the Indian context. So the fintechs came into play, right? And initially they started taking the front end part of the banking system, right? Like the customer facing part. But very lately we have also seen they are also intruding into the back end part, right? Regulatory and also the compliance related things. So very recently, I can also see some of the solutions which are interregulatory part, which are very interesting solutions, by the way, because a lot of NLP models, linguistic models, has been used to try to find out some of the regulatory details from a lot of regulatory documents, and
Yeah.
then probably help. So that is another area, and another use case. If you allow me, Shailendra, I can talk about this use case. One use case, which actually I was part of that development, was a cognitive insurance claim kind of a thing, which is again a computer vision kind of a use case, wherein, yeah, wherein essentially you can take the photograph of a damaged car or a car in accident, and it can automatically basically process those images, okay, and it can give you like what could be the insurance claim amount, okay, and if it is within the threshold, then it will automatically approve that claim amount. If it is not, then probably some other process at that, and it is very, very quick. Okay, it is only with couple of minutes, and you need to just take 5 to 6 photographs of your damaged car, and it can identify basically what is the amount of damage that has happened, whether the damage is only on the peripheral of the car, or it has gone till the engine, whether it is damaged in the plastic parts or it has gone to the metal parts. So up to that level of accuracy. And this is I think this is a very interesting use case, Shailendra. Yes, over to you.
Good stuff. Actually, I was also involved in one of those use cases. But before I get on to myself, Imtiaz, you would have seen some very, very interesting new age use cases. Any use case that comes to mind that you want to share with the audience?
Yes, thank you, Shailendra. Just going back a step for the audience, I was a director at Morgan Stanley, the US investment bank.
Yep.
So I can talk in particular from the corporate and investment banking side. However, in general, building upon what Utpal said, across the entire banking spectrum, we've been seeing applications of computer vision and text analytics and anomaly detection towards KYC, know your customer, anti-money laundering, etc., which is protecting both the financial institution but also the customers. So that can be, for example, checking photo ID for onboarding, using computer vision, using text analytics to check documents, and then various anomaly detection tools. And that also extends to cybersecurity, again, protecting the bank and its customers, where anomaly detection and other techniques of machine learning are used, all the way through to the customer-facing side. And in the investment banking side and asset management side, we've seen more applications increasingly towards asset management, portfolio management, which could be applying machine learning to portfolio optimization, towards automated index tracking, which reduces the fees substantially for pension investors, or pursuing alpha, tracking factors and smart beta investing. Increasingly, also in forecasting, time series analytics, to try and forecast economic and econometric data and finding the relationships there and forecasting those. For example, where house prices going, where GDP growing. And then, of course, the whole text analytics side, which is becoming a very big piece, which can either be, for example, as the example from JP Morgan, he introduced an algorithm called Coin a number of years ago, where they found they could do the work of a huge number of lawyers within minutes, which is a huge cost saving. Not saying the lawyers are going to go redundant, of course. However, it was a material cost saving for them. And then things like sentiment analysis and tracking, understanding what the customer is saying, etc., through text analytics. So it's going all the way end to end from the back office, from onboarding, the onboarding part of the journey of the customer, the risk management side, and then all the way to customer facing and trying to understand and better target the customer.
Good stuff. I'll ask you a question on text analytics. Remind me later. Tell me, before I start giving a couple of my examples or use cases that I've been involved in, which overlap between Imtiaz and Utpal, any use case that comes to mind to you?
Thanks, Shelley. The one which I always like to refer to is one called the Ping An Good Doctor use case, which is a Chinese use case, but I use it because of the degree of success, but also the scale and the ambition and the fact that it is very hugely customer focused. I guess really the background here, and we started at the top of the call by referring to the pandemic and all those issues, is the enormous stress which was occurring to the Chinese health market because of urbanization, people moving from the country into the city, and the pressures on doctors and the pressure on individual resources. The process effectively is an AI-based healthcare insurance system, which allows the patient to insert details into a portal, and from that to have an artificial intelligence orientated diagnosis, which is supported by a real-time human physician. So, if we're looking at pure AI, which is dealing without the human, then I guess you would call that a soft form of AI. But what's really impressive about this is that it is not just a diagnosis tool. Rather, it has a whole back-end ecosystem which supports it. So once you actually have the diagnosis from the online system supported by the human doctor, the system then directs you toward the ecosystem, 3,000 hospitals, 85,000 pharmacists. The idea of linking that also to automatic delivery of medicines to your home. So for me, what's beautiful about this as a case study is that it is principally customer focused, linking to a real-time issue, but also it doesn't sit as a technology system on a standalone basis, but rather it provides the entire ecosystem. Is it a model for the future at a global level? Well, that's quite debatable. But what's interesting for me, particularly looking at the Chinese model, is that when we in the West and Asia talk about running a pilot and maybe running 20 or 30,000 cases per year through the pilot, the Chinese model and the Indian models, the number of people there allow them to run that number of pilot people per day. So the scale is a different, it's just at a different level. And how, of course, kind of some of those Eastern ideas go into the Western market will be a very interesting thing for us to consider in the future.
Very interesting. To your point, three things that come to mind. One is that I was talking to one of the risk manager, chief risk officer of a large bank, and I figured out when I asked them about what kind of machine learning techniques do they use, and I figured out after a conversation, 15-20 minutes, that they were using everything was rule based. There was very less machine learning component to it. So I think there is a level of maturity in different organizations. Some have moved up and some have not. And I hope that this year, a lot of organizations, a lot of banks will move more towards using machine learning and using optimization as a result of that. The second use case that comes to mind, well, you stole my use case around the car insurance, because that was exactly what I did 7-8 years ago whilst at Accenture. But we leave that. You've explained that to the T. There's another one which comes to mind is the claims management. So we could actually, when someone calls and puts a claim in, we could predict whether the claim was fraudulent or whether the claim was was any accurate in terms of the that was around health insurance, and we covered that quite well using it wasn't that complicated. It was very, very simply linear regression that we used in that particular case, and it did work. So there are some very, very interesting use cases that I have seen in the financial services industry. But having said that, let's move on to the next area. And we can't get away in this particular environment around COVID to not talk about COVID. And one thing which I've been asking for last 1 year or so, that if you ask organization what is driving digital transformation in your organization, whether it is the CIO, the CEO, the CDO, or COVID-19, it is COVID-19 that has actually driven digital transformation to the T. So, Utpal, let me come to you and ask you, what do you think about digital transformation as it is going using AI in 2022-23? How is it going to go at a rampant speed, and what's going to happen out there?
Yeah, thank you, Shailendra. So I think you are very correct in terms of, because the COVID has actually propelled the digital transformation that is happening from various sectors, and I'll talk more on the banking side. So the
So
banks,
just give me a minute, Utpal. That question
yeah,
was to Imtiaz, actually. Imtiaz,
yeah.
did you get the question?
So would you just repeat that again? I was focused on what Upper was saying there.
Yeah. So the question was, do you think in 2022-23 digital transformation will be propelled by AI as it goes?
Yeah,
What do you see there?
thank you, Shailendra. So I was also looking at some of the questions on the side when you were asking that one before. So maybe if I could deal with both of them and a few of the questions that have been asked on the side, because I think they interlink. Absolutely, I agree with you that COVID-19 has really forced a fundamental speed up of digital transformation. And we saw that those who were reliant on physical and had ignored the digital side suffered disproportionately. We saw the valuations on the stock exchange of digital companies went through the roof as
Yeah,
well. So there's no way back. For example, my mother, who didn't really like using digital now, is constantly digital, and she's not going to go back. Now, in 22, 23, that's only going to accelerate as we get more standalone 5G networks around the world, more edge computing. We'll talk about things like the metaverse later. And the other things that are happening, like some of the questions that have been raised around things like governance, explainability, and point that you raised, Shailendra, about how rule-based systems are moving away from that. Well, sometimes the banks would, and insurance companies wanted to stay with suboptimal techniques like rule-based systems because they were scared about understanding how deep neural networks would make decisions or other machine learning techniques.
yeah.
And I'm not saying that we've got fully their explainability. However, from both the governance and explainable side of understanding why the machine learning made certain decisions, we have models like transformers with self-intention, which are much more transparent compared to other techniques. We've seen research breakthroughs in the likes of MIT and other neural network techniques coming through, like known as liquid neural networks, which provide much better explainability. So I do believe we're improving in that area a lot more than where we were before, which is going to allow more people from financial institutions, or more, I should say, banks and insurance companies, etc., asset management companies, use these more advanced techniques. So definitely we're going to see a much more rapid adoption. The other thing is, if you're a financial institution and you're still holding back on these areas, and all your rivals, for example, you look at the expenditure by Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan, it's about 13 billion per annum approximately dollars on technology, a lot of it AI. If you don't respond, you're going to become a Stone Age company, which is irrelevant to the customer. If you're talking about real-time engagement from Utpal, for example, you're talking about Tony talking about diagnostic and understanding the customer and the institution. If you're not able to be there on your risk management, if you're not able to match your competitors on the customer experience and offering, you're gone within 3 years.
Good stuff. Utpal, sorry, I just want to
Yeah,
come
do you
back
mind
to
if
you
I
now.
just pick up on that?
Yeah, Tony, I'm coming to you. Give me a minute. Utpal, what do you think about how digital transformation will be impacted in 2022 using AI?
Yeah, so what we have seen during this COVID is basically everything. I mean, it's starting from so probably some of the banks and financial institutions are already in their digital journey, But also there are many other mid-sized bank or small-sized banks who have not yet started their digital journey in that way. So they are starting with like building their digital infrastructure. Okay, and we have seen it within the COVID itself. Okay, and also then trying to render more and more their services into their digital channels, right? Because that is a trend basically not only in the banking sector but also in every sector is coming, because they want now their services to be availed by the customer into all their digital channels. And for that, I think it is not a very easy journey, right? Because if you want to transform your traditional products and services into a digital ready kind of a product and services, then you require a lot of other things around to do that. Okay, so for example, as I told you, the digital skeleton or digital infrastructure that need to be there. Then you need to make your products ready for that. You need to see how your channels how you can render those into your channels. Okay, and also you have to think about the customer experience part, because after rendering that, if you cannot give that kind of experience to your users, then probably I mean the adoption of those channels and your services will not be that widespread, right? So these are some things which I can see which is happening, right? And also along with that, many financial institutions have also understood like moving to cloud, right?
Yep.
Modernizing their legacy applications. Okay, so these things are also in parallel. It is happening. And another very interesting thing, Shailendra, what I see is, because if you want your digital channels or your front end channels to be agile, so you should also have the backend processes or backend what do you call the infrastructure to be agile enough to support your front end channels, right? So,
Yep.
and that's where technologies like RPA, robotic process automation, and all other technologies coming into play. So AI is definitely one part which is bringing the cream of the things. Okay, so basically wherever you require that kind of a human intuitiveness or kind of intelligence into your enterprise applications, so they are building machine learning models and all other things. But lot of other technologies around are also actually helping this entire transformation, and that includes for many of the banks like building their data ecosystem. Okay, so many banks has started now, I mean, pushing all their data into a data lake or a data warehouse kind of a system and run a lot of transformation and then launch advanced analytics or building AI applications on top of that. So these are some trends, and I can see that this will continue in 2022 as well as 2023 kind of thing. Yeah.
So, Tony, what do you think? What do you see around you, possibly in the UK or even the area you play in? What do you see? How is digital transformation being impacted by AI?
Um, well, firstly, apologies to Imtiaz for trying to jump in on his space. But I was really intrigued by the concept that we banks have to adopt a Me Too. And I was also intrigued by the fact that the case studies which were most prevalent appear to be insurance case studies. And it made me think a little about why that should be the case. And I think the first issue really is the challenge of understanding return on AI programs. Because with insurance, it's relatively straightforward. You can understand claims management costs, you can understand loss ratios, and these are quite tangible. When you start looking at other financial sectors, such as banking, the idea of using AI as a way of moving forward is a little more difficult because it's harder to really fully understand the soft benefits which attach. Now, we all kind of jump onto the idea that we will increasingly become digital customers, of course, and that data and analytics is increasingly underpinning everything we do. But the challenge really is that we need to recognize that unless we do this for a really good reason, be it either financial or ecological or environmental or whatever, then we're just jumping onto a tech bandwagon. The reality also is that you mentioned the pandemic, and the pandemic has caused multiple stresses within financial services, not just in terms of the way in which we work, but the way in which we link into supply chain, the stresses on capital, for example, And of course, how do we actually keep with the rate of change in technology? In other words, is the tail wagging the dog in terms of our bankers looking for new technology to improve their capability, or are technology companies pushing their capabilities onto the sector? So it's kind of an interesting one, and it kind of almost came back to that comment at the introduction about the autobiography. And it's one thing saying, what is happening and what will happen in the next 2 years, but really for me the key question is, why is it happening? Is it just around Gen Z and around the fact that they are so connected and attached to their mobile devices? But kind of majority of asset owners at the moment aren't really Gen Z, the guys of my generation and older. And for them, technology is not only challenging, but there are certain uncertainties which are attached to it. And of course, there is a relative lack of trust in some large organizations at the moment, including government. What will it take, because of that lack of trust, to start undermining the digital roadmap, which financial services are so keen on following? Over to you.
Okay. So that is interesting, and that actually asked me one question. We've talked about we're going to fast track digital transformation, but if I was to wear my futuristic glasses, and if I thought of visualizing a highly matured AI, technology driven FS environment, how would it look like? Where do you see it all going? Let's bring in everything. Let's bring in the building blocks of AI. Let's bring in edge. Let's bring in federated learning. Let's bring in IoT. Let's bring in NLP. Let's bring in everything. So if I was to visualize where this is all going, Imtiaz, I'm looking at you and thinking, where do you think the experience is going to go, and where do you see it all going? How do you visualize all of that?
Yeah, I think definitely these are key points. Just before we go into the future and federated learning, I think I just want to clarify on Tony's point. Whilst I agree with Tony that ROI is important, I think maybe I wasn't very clear when I was speaking, because I gave a lot of examples that were specific to that the banks were engaged in. In actual fact, it's factually not correct to say that banks haven't been investing a lot in AI, or in fact, they've invested more than the insurance companies.
Yep.
So in actual fact, if you go back over the last 10 years, perhaps one of the biggest investors in AI and big data technology has been the banking side. And it's
Exactly.
areas like I mentioned, which is KYC, anti-money laundering, the RegTech side, portfolio management, which is a huge area and also touches on asset management, both on the robo-advisory side with passive index management, which is a huge area, right? Reducing the fees there for the end user, but also and replicating the index, active asset management with smart beta technologies, the sentiment analysis side, the forecasting side, things that may be, and indeed, as Utpal mentioned, a huge marketing area where many of the banks have invested a lot in the marketing side. Have they done everything correctly? Have they done it always really well? They're probably a mixture. There's some who've done it way better than others, and that's often the case in all industries, be it healthcare, be it insurance. What I do believe, though, is that absolutely, when you look at COVID and the fact that we were reliant on either our desktops or mobile, and now that theme is going to continue going forwards. And that's why if you're not, even like I said, those in their 70s, like my mother, for instance, is now doing all her banking and all her transactions on mobile, whereas before she would always go to the branch before COVID.
Yeah.
And she's not going to switch back to the branch now. Many of the branches are gone. In fact, she was pointing out many of the branches she used to use are gone now, especially during COVID, that accelerated. So wherever you adopt digital, AI follows because of the data that we create, the data footprint. So if we now look at the examples of where we're going in the future, absolutely, federated learning with differential privacy is going to be key for financial services and indeed healthcare, etc., to unlocking even further the capability of machine learning for both collaborative learning and also expanding the footprint across sensitive private data in such a way we can maintain data privacy for the users. and across siloed data, because increasingly a lot of the data might be being created on a mobile device, especially with edge computing, as more and more the AI will be on the device itself rather than a centralized cloud, and indeed IoT devices. The fact that, as Utpal was saying, real-time analytics and credit, for example, in this IoT world of edge computing, rather than looking at historical information from a year ago, we could actually be making real-time credit assessments, including for corporates, understanding what's going on with their business, with sensors, etc. So we're going to go into a world where real-time analytics, decision-making on the fly, and edge computing, etc., are going to be very important. One more thing is that with the edge computing side and federated learning, as we come to the era of glasses, which Apple and probably Meta, which used to be Facebook, etc., may well launch their augmented reality glasses next year. And again, when we talk about AI and big data, the mobile device has been responsible for most of it. It's not flying cars, it's not robots. If the user interface does change, and those such as myself and others believe it will do, towards glasses over the next few years, the metaverse, the omniverse, the whole new range of customer experiences where neural translation will mean language as a barrier goes away, because I could be speaking in English or Hindi and the other person could be hearing me in Mandarin, for instance, or Japanese. That is and with 3D holograms, that is probably the world that we're going to quite sooner than people. Who knows what kind of products and services we can create around that.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Guys, to my audience, I got so engrossed in the whole conversation, I just forgot. There are more than 50 people who are watching us live, at least on my LinkedIn profile. Guys, please, please, please press the like button. If you're watching this on any of the platforms at the moment, please press the like button, share, follow, subscribe, whatever it is, so that you get to see more of such content. And I would quickly go to Tony. Tony, what do you think? Visualize for me the future. How is it going to look like?
Well, you know, they didn't actually give me a crystal ball to do this particular event, but I'm kind of interested by Imtiaz's comment about the branch, the bank branch. And although, of course, kind of the numbers appear to speak for themselves in terms of, you know, there are so many fewer branches on the high street than ever before. If you look at some countries, for example, Latin America, they have reinvented the bank branch by creating a concept called cafe branches or cafe banks. And organizations such as Santander combine the concept of Starbucks or Costa with a banking facility. So therefore, in the same way that people would get together around the table and talk about technology, like in an innovation hub, bolted onto a real-time human banking capability. Don't necessarily entirely see the banking branch model disappearing, but it could be invented in a different sort of way. The future is exciting, isn't it? There's many options, but at the end of the day, you know, we have to respond to what the customer actually wants. When I talk to manager, I don't want to talk to a chatbot. I actually want to talk to a human. I know that many of the decisions he's make or recommend are linked to some form of automation or analytic insight. But I still want to talk to a human. Chatbots often have a human assistant, used for better expression. That feels a bit again like the wrong way around. But the idea of listening to a chat box conversation and drop into the conversation when need be. So, you know, I don't think the world is entirely robotic and chatbot and automated and digital. I think for the human. And then just finally, just on the whole of AI, there's a lot of hype relative to AI at the moment, particularly when we start throwing quite advanced terms and like verse and the rest. You know, AI embraces multiple and means quite different things to different people. For many people, predictive analytics, when you choose your TV program or the present girlfriend on Valentine's Day, AI. But it's not. It's just simple advanced analytics. So let's not get carried away by this jargon. Let's not get carried away by the hype. Let's think about the situation.
So Tony, I've got a thing to add there. Yep, I'm sure we don't like to talk to bots. The only challenge there is that those bots are not intelligent. The moment the bots become intelligent and they could understand what I'm saying, they could react the way I want them to, I don't think there will be a much difference between a bot and a human. At the moment, we are far away from that, and I think that is what is missing at the moment. And that's just my point of view, maybe wrong. Um, Sorry, let me get to Utpal. Utpal, what do you think about the future? How do you visualize future of FS using AI? Go blase. Think outside of the box. Think that you've got a magic wand and you can apply all the techniques that you think of.
I think, Shailendra, within your question itself, the answer is hiding. So basically, you talked about the financial services. So I think the future is going to be more on the domain focused area rather than the technology alone. Definitely, technologies are there, but domain focus. I will tell you because till now we have been talking about AI applications,
Yep.
blockchain applications, applications with meta, okay, gamification, mobile, and all other things. Now the world is changing, and I think, like from my experience, uh, it is going to be multiple technologies complementing each other to build a real-time business case or business use case in a manner. So therein you will see the AI applications are there, blockchain in the background, okay, in the backend part of this, meta for some kind of immersive experience, okay, and whatnot. So all those things will come into play to solve a particular thing. So that's is going to be the level of maturity which is coming into this kind of industries, wherein we are actually trying to focus on the real business problem with the help of multiple technologies. It's a amalgamation of technologies complementing each other and building those kind of things. So that's what I can think. And I think Imtiaz and Tony has already covered, and you also already covered a lot many use cases. Yeah.
Hmm. Good stuff. I will hold you there, Utpal, and because you've spent a lot of time in the industry, um, can I ask you a question? What are the biggest challenges associated with AI and ML with regulated industries? So, because financial services being regulated, are there any challenges that you see that that are stopping people from going forward? What are the challenges in the regulated industry like FS?
Yes. So you rightly said, Shailendra, like there are challenges, of course, and I think it is not only in India, but in across the globe. Okay, because
Mhm.
I what I see is somehow the technological innovation and the explosion which is happening. It is happening within the enterprises or within the academia or in the
Mhm.
startup world. Okay, and unfortunately it is not in the control of any of the governments, okay, because
Yep.
it is the explosion is happening somewhere else.
Yep.
And for some reason, okay, and it is not my view, but if, many people will say, and I don't want to generalize it, the the regulators are far behind the technological explosion that has happened today, okay, for whatever reason. Probably one reason could be there are no much platforms wherein the regulators and the technology people can sit across the table and they can discuss and decide on what regulation to bring, kind of
Mhm.
thing. So that is kind of a scenario everywhere. Okay, so you go to any country, all the banks of those countries are being regulated by a central bank. Like in case of India, it is kind of RBI, right? So unfortunately, in many cases, from my personal experience also, I have seen the regulators are behind what is happening in the technology world. Okay,
Yep.
and I think there should be, and I think it is all now slowly happening. There are a lot of platforms coming up across the globe wherein the regulators and the technology people can actually discuss, actually sit and bring a regulation which is actually conductive for the technology. Because see, in the just for the name of regulation, we should not stop or we should not hinder the growth that is happening in this world, right? Like in AI and all those things. So we need to, that trade-off is very, very important. And that comes with proper understanding, proper mature thinking and all those things. And for that, both technology people and the regulators should come to a common ground. So that's what I feel. And you are correct. There is a challenge even today, and I'm hoping that it is going to be overcome soon.
Okay, so but what are the challenges? So Imtiaz, do you have a point of view on the challenges?
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. I think there are challenges, of course, and as we mentioned, things like explainability, governance, data security, data practices, data harvesting. All these things have been challenges, not just for the banks, but in general across
Yeah.
with the social media giants, etc. That we're still grappling with. I think we have a generation in many of the prime ministers and presidents, and indeed some of the C-level executives in our companies who don't understand technology, for whom,
Exactly.
I still remember a Polaroid camera as state of the art, perhaps. And I think when that generation retires, perhaps over the next 5 years, we're going to probably see perhaps a different thinking from some of the organizations. And indeed, in terms of our politicians who really lag and don't understand what's been happening with social media and data, etc., which perhaps could be much better handled and with principle-based regulation rather than descriptive regulation, perhaps, so that we're focused on principles and good governance. That said, if we come back to the point of chatbots, for example, and 2 years ago, I think we could have said that chatbots were pretty bad. There wasn't very good performance. Now you look at transformer models and you look at the example that on Reddit, apparently it was reported that GPT-3 was sat there undetected for weeks, and people didn't realize that they were chatting with a bot.
With the bot, yeah.
So absolutely the gap is narrowing, but would you then say, okay, I'm going to trust GPT-3 or a bot now to go and make investment decisions for you, without a human? That's a different kettle of fish. You'd probably still want human there for augmentation. And it's also supply and demand, because if digital is taking off because people want it. If people really wanted the physical world, we would still be there. The experience wasn't relevant. It was a painful experience for many. Queuing, whether in a retail store, we're seeing retailers with 200-year histories disappearing overnight, right, over the last couple of years. And it's because it's no longer relevant to the user, the consumer. It's about the customer. And we've got a young generation now who've grown up with the internet, who are very savvy, who want this new experiences. And we're about to go through change in terms of challenges that is more rapid, probably, than the entirety of the Industrial Revolution over the next 5 years. With the metaverse, with this immersive experiences, augmented reality and virtual reality that struggle with 4G, but are going to work much better on latency with standalone 5G networks. The rise of the Internet of Things with AI going there, emerging there, which means that we're going to have AI all around us, around our homes and cities, rather than, as I said, on remote cloud servers right now. There's going to be massive machine-to-machine communication. So the challenges that we're going to, they're both exciting opportunities, but very rapid change, which means that, again, skills for our workforce and our young. The experienced workforce are going to need retraining with digital skills. It doesn't mean everybody has to be a coder. Some of them may wish to learn coding, but understanding digital design, digital technology, digital marketing, as well as the young people being given new digital skills as well. So a lot of these issues need to be considered by our leaders, be they politicians or C-level executives, that we're going through very disruptive change over the next 5 years. And I fear that not all of them understand that.
Good stuff. Tony, you raised your hand as well, and I'm sorry, but I'm coming back to you. What challenges do you see in the regulated industry around AIML? Good stuff. I think you made some valid points, Tony. I think, and we will take them in the other section. I'm just conscious of time. We've already done, we've hit the 52-minute mark. Let me ask one more question, and then possibly we'll go towards the audience Q&A. And again and again, Imtiaz, I keep coming back to you, and I'm coming back to you once again. So with metaverse, and you've done some good work around metaverse, I wanted to understand the impact metaverse and 5G will have together on AI, on the financial services sector. So can you just elaborate a bit on that for the audience? Because I think metaverse is quite new for a lot of people, and we had that offline discussion a few weeks ago. Possibly we'll take it to the next session as well, and unpeel the metaverse onion. But till then, can you just give us an idea of how metaverse and 5G together will make a difference?
Yeah, thank you, Shailendra. So it's all about the customer experience. And as I say, when we think of AI and in the movies, it's robots and flying cars or whatever, autonomous things. However, in reality, much of the AI has been driven by mobile phones and mobile applications in reality. And that explosion over the last decade is now set to be increasingly transformed 2 to 3 years from now as we transition towards 5G enabled glasses with AR and VR, and in particular mixed reality, which is somewhere in between AR and VR. And with mixed reality, you can interact. It's like going beyond augmented reality so that you can actually interact with the objects around you, which means you could be having a virtual office or controlling things in your home, etc., through your glasses. So in this environment, which is immersive, and you could have a pop-up bank manager, for instance, where language is gone as a barrier. So I could be dealing with, from a banking side, I could be here in London, dealing with a customer in Japan or Hong Kong, and they could be hearing me through neural translation in Mandarin or Japanese, or dealing with someone in France and they hear me in French and I hear them in English. So, and we'd see each other in 3D, we would as holograms, and we would be able to chart things in 3D and interactive basis. So right now, when you think of, when you get a PowerPoint presentation often, or an Excel model, it's static, you have to sit there, especially with Excel, and work through or what's driving it, or the PowerPoint, you can't even do that. It's just a presentation. In this holographic world, you could type, an AI agent could be explaining to you what's driving that forecast. This is the basis of the forecast, the customer growth, the assumptions in the model, etc. So it's going to be a very interactive world, and again, one where you can start to understand the risk, what you're investing in. If you're an investor and a bond product or a structured bond comes in, what is the payout? What are the risks involved, etc. So very immersive, highly personalized to a whole different level than what we have right now. So very, very exciting. People just think of the metaverse as gaming, and maybe it's going to hit some radically transform e-commerce and fashion, etc. But actually, it'll have huge applications in the business world, including finance and indeed insurance, because you can be understanding the world. And Tony was talking about risk, predicting risk, predicting something's going to go wrong before it happens, either with a vehicle or with your things in the home, a pipe, home appliances, etc. So real-time engagement. Very quickly, an explainability point. I fully agree with Tony that these black box of challenge with deep neural networks, with things like the LSTMs and the convolutional neural networks, have been a big, big problem. However, when we're looking with transformers with self-attention, that have been driving a lot of the innovation in deep learning recently, including text, analytics, and beyond, they're much more transparent than those other techniques because of their self-attention mechanism. And we're having new innovations like liquid neural networks, neural circuit policies, which are very sparse and so highly interpretable and give causal inference too. So hopefully on that side as well, because that will be important also in the metaverse environment. You want to understand, because the nature of the engagement is going to be so deep and personalized beyond what we have right now, and interactive, that you obviously want to know what the decision-making process. Very, very exciting, transformative time.
Good stuff. Tony, what do you think about metaverse and 5G coming together? Yep. Utpal, what do you think? Today, the finance minister released the budget in India, and 5G was one of the top things that she has mentioned. And there'll be a lot of investment in 5G in the coming year. How do you see that 5G and metaverse changing the India financial services scene?
Yeah. So yes, you are correct, Shailendra. So in the latest budget, there is a huge focus on the 5G part, and it should be. So on the Meta and 5G together, and if I talk about Meta alone, although I'm not an expert on that, uh, what I can see is there is going to be a complete virtual marketplace. Okay, huge marketplace which is coming up and which is completely virtual. and been again backboned by blockchain. Okay, and your NFTs for any kind of transaction. So and it is anything and everything. Okay, so probably you want to buy an aeroplane or probably a helicopter, right? So this is the best place actually to go in the metaverse, meta world, and actually have the demo of that touch and feel, do interactive kind of things. And Imtiaz has very rightly said that all kind of training and any kind of upskilling, skilling kind of things will completely come into metaverse tomorrow, because this is the interactive platform, and here we can see there are a lot of things. But again, coming to what Imtiaz has said, like in the risk management, regulatory area, and all other things, how financial sector is going to this thing. So I fully agree with him, but I see it is a little bit futuristic still, because the technology need to be matured. Because if you look at the meta world today, I think it is still kind of it's a evolving field. But yes, I'm pretty sure that what Imtiaz has said, probably tomorrow we'll be sitting together and we'll be discussing risks and all those things with the real interactive kind of an environment. Yeah, so that's what I can see, Shailendra.
No, no, I totally agree with you, and I agree with Imtiaz that it is no more going to be just a gaming platform, and people think it is gaming, but it is far more than that. And I think it actually calls for a session on just Meta itself,
Better.
discuss various complications. Too big a discussion to have in 5-10 minutes. It needs a bit of time. But Imtiaz, do you want to add anything onto that as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, thank you, Shailendra. So, like, I've been writing about this since 2018 and presenting on it 2018, 2019 at events around the world, including Doha, Qatar for the World Cup, telling them what they could do with it. So the metaverse as a term was actually coined in 1992. It's not a brand new term.
Yep.
Maybe I think Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg have given it a lot more prominence. But this is a technology that a lot of people have been working on for some time. There was already a metaverse unicorn from a year ago that came out of South Korea that's based in California. So I think whilst I agree with Utpal that yes, it will take time fully to get the 5G glasses right, to get the 2D to 3D automation, especially at the human level, to better and better standards. It is an evolving area. I think this is going a lot faster than people realize, because the challenge has been standalone 5G networks. And I think the fact that there was the politics with Huawei removing their infrastructure, putting a new infrastructure, delayed standalone 5G in many countries. But I think in a year or two from now, we're probably going to see that real fast transition towards the AIoT and eventually the AIoE, Internet of Everything, combined with AI. And the metaverse and the omniverse is really part of that, or you could say a different name for that in a way, or a real fundamental part of that.
No, I totally agree with you. It is, people are just not realizing the speed that it is going to hit the world with. Um, I got the taste of it recently when my 8-year-old came to me and said, "Oh, I want to code in Roblox," and I was like, "What?" And when I looked at it and I said, "This is how metaverse is going to look like. This is what she's doing." So these guys are far ahead of us, and we're just thinking. And the way they're engrossed and involved, she does trading, and what do you trade? They trade, as you said, NFTs and God not what. They know more than me, and I'm just saying, "Well, I'm an expert." Well, no, I'm not. They're experts. So the difference is huge, and I think the speed with which metaverse is going to hit us in the coming days is going to be huge. And if we don't, as one of my bosses used to say, it's going to come with a steam engine. Either you stand in front of it or just get off. So that's how it's going to be, it looks like. Okay, very quickly. So we've hit the 1 hour mark, and I think people are waiting to get answers to their questions as well. So I would quickly jump onto the audience Q&A, and we'll pick up questions one by one very, very quickly and take it from there. So guys, wait for me 1 second, and we will be on the audience Q&A. Okay, so let's start with the um, one question. I didn't get the name. The name hasn't come in through. It says, interesting use cases. What are the most popular ones, and which one of you see it in for the future? So the use cases that we guys were talking about, which is the most popular use case? Anyone wants to have a go at that? Utpal?
Yeah, Shailendra. So I think I'll try to answer this in a bit different way. So QML, quantum machine learning, is also now getting traction, right? Because in the financial sector, we need to understand there are a lot of optimization problems. Okay, and till today, with a classical approach of doing this kind of optimization, uh, are still postmodern. It's not real time. Okay,
Yep.
probably some of them are near real time, but still not real time. So here, a quantum machine learning kind of a approach plays a major role, and I can see some of the banks has already started doing some kind of pilot on some of the QML quantum machine learning use cases. Okay, so and the same will go to other sectors as well. It's not only financial. So if you look at logistic, or if you look at aviation or any other industry, there are a lot of use cases. So I think quantum machine learning is one area which is going to be huge. And as I told you, like the use cases will be mostly for the optimization things, because wherever you require 1,000 paths to take at a time to find out the most optimal path, right? So here quantum plays a major role. So that's what I can think.
Imtiaz, what do you think? Which is the most popular use case that you've seen?
Well, I think I fully agree with Utpal. However, I think right now the more boring, I say boring, but essential areas like KYC, anti-money laundering, and cybersecurity are prevalent everywhere because ultimately banks are very heavily regulated, perhaps the most heavily regulated sector in the world, and financial services. So they need to protect the institution, they need to protect the customers. So a lot of money has gone into regulatory technology to manage those risks with AI. Having said that, I also agree going forwards, as Utpal said, real-time engagement is important. And I'd like to expand on what he said, because if you take the example when COVID came in, and right now, the way that financial institutions, including banks, about, and remember, a financial institution at its most basic level is there to take risk for a given price. And that price should be correct. If the risk is too great, decline it, or price it appropriately in a contract, be that insurance or banking. So essentially, they've been looking at historical financial information and projecting that forwards, right? Forecasting, predicting. Now, the better your information, your data set, the more relevant, the better your decision making. And when COVID came, the aviation sector was mentioned, that got hit heavily. So your data from a year ago was no longer relevant to what was happening today and what was going to happen during the pandemic. So getting to real-time credit analytics, real-time engagement and assessment is going to be of great importance to the financial services sector. Real-time insurance, real-time banking, real-time credit. That is, as we get AI on the edge with 5G, or standalone 5G, I should say, is again a world that we're going to go towards.
Good stuff. Tony, do you have a popular? Do you have which use case do you think is the most popular you've seen? Mhm, mhm. Mhm. Okay, let's quickly get to the next question. Next question is from Ehsan Ali, and he says, where do you see maximum investment in next couple of years in AI-based programs in financial services? I will take it to Imtiaz. You?
Great. So, I mean, I don't want to contradict anything Utpal says, but certainly I believe increasingly more and more towards the customer side. I think I would emphasize what Tony was saying, which is, and the point I was making, which is regulatory technology, which includes cybersecurity, right? So that is going to be very important. And again, it will only go up in the era of 5G because a lot of manufacturers of devices haven't perhaps invested as much in security as they should have. And so certainly that will be prevalent in the future. And so anomaly detection, etc., defenses will be key. However, I think the customer engagement, investing in immersive experiences, the marketing side, people talk a lot about AI being about cost reductions and replacing people, whereas in actual fact, augmenting people, giving a better customer experience, better targeting, etc., I think are going to be really key areas for investment going forwards. So managing that customer journey, giving them an interactive, immersive experience, making sure the product and services are relevant to them, upselling, cross-selling, but also just a really good customer experience and journey are going to be of great importance. So investment into technologies that are increasingly customer-facing, investment into the back-end systems, as Utpal mentioned before, a number of banks, in particular, I'd say in Europe as well as the US, have really dated infrastructure, with things like COBOL, which isn't really so great for the modern era of AI and big data. So we've seen the likes of the Canadian banks like Toronto Dominion and Royal Bank of Canada invest a lot in modern systems. I think that's going to become key as well to enable this next generation of platforms to come through.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Utpal and Tony, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think what yes, Tony, please go ahead, please.
Yeah, Tony? Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah,
Guys,
yeah.
Utpal,
Yeah. So I think I agree with both Imtiaz and Tony. But another area I would like to touch upon is essentially what I can see where the investments will go, because we can see a very minimum. If you look at the numbers, very minimum number of banks across the globe has actually been mature in terms of their digital journey, right? So there are lot many banks who need to start or probably just started. So here I think building a data ecosystem, okay, first is very important before they can have to lend into some kind of AI journey, okay, in real sense. Because if you want to give some kind of a customer analytics, if you want to give some kind of a personalization, customization to the customer or hyper personalization to the customers, you require a 360-degree view of the customer, right? And that will come from your data and data from across different systems, whether it is your core banking system, other systems, your social data, so many data. So I think building data ecosystems fast is going to be the more focus and the area which will get the more investment in most of the, this mid-size and small-size banks and financial institutions in coming years. So that's what I can see.
good stuff. Let's go to the next question. Well, to be honest, Tony, just before I go to the next question, to add to that, the government of India is now spending a few $1 billion to actually create digital universities. This is just announced off the press, I think 2-3 hours ago. So watch that space. At least India is doing something about that. Okay, Let me very quickly get to the next question. Yep. Okay, let's get to the next question. This is from my good old friend Mike Nash. He says, with AI in financial sector, I have seen more use of AI in all aspects of finance. Do you think governance will be a bigger part in financial institutions in future? With this restrict or will this restrict or help AI ingenuity? Imtiaz, do you want to have a go?
Yeah, sure. So thank you. I mean, when you think back to the financial crisis, regulation for banks got even tighter, and indeed across financial services. So they very tightly regulated, and so governance is a uh, key part of banking. So often with banks, even before they innovate things, and that's perhaps why the fintechs have been quicker at innovation, has to go through a lot of risk committees, a lot of assessments before adoption is taken. So it's I'm not trying to excuse the banks, but there are tight processes there. So it's and so yes, and we've also seen the impact of governance around Facebook, or what's now called Meta, and the issues that arose there on data, etc. So, absolutely, I think banks are going to be very cognizant of the fact that they have to have good data practices in place, that they need transparency and understanding. But also, I think it can help with the governance side if it's applied correctly. So, um, governance is going to be very key for making sure that regulators know what banks are doing, if they're applying AI to, which increasingly is being done for portfolio and trading decisions, that there is proper stop losses and risk management there. But again, AI also helps uncover risk as well more effectively. Things that human analysts could lose in huge big data sets can be quickly caught onto. So, for example, trader oversight and the RegTech side, AI is used to listen in on conversations by traders on phones, etc., and look for, and also trading patterns by traders to look for abnormal behavior to try and stop a future Nick Leeson, if you like, and other scandals that occurred. So, so it cuts in both directions, but absolutely, and it comes back to the point of regulators and C-level executives and presidents and prime ministers becoming more digital savvy, and that even ties into the point about training and skills. Because if you don't understand what's going on in the world and where we're going, it's hard to then position for the future.
Good stuff. Utpal, do you want to add anything?
Yes, I think I fully agree with what Imtiaz has told. Only one point to add here is what I can see. Again, it is my personal view. In case of AI, the boundary between governance and ethics has become very, very thin line. Okay, so because if you think about the ethical angle also, because governance probably will be kind of a high level what do you call directions that can be given. I don't think so in case of AI. I mean, it can go into that level wherein it can actually uh, 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 control how the developers are developing this kind of things, because there could be many things, even it is related to data, but data could be biased data and all other things. So I think it is a combination of governance plus the ethics, which together can solve the bigger problem that we are actually trying to address here, at least in case of AI. So that's what I can see. And again, I'd like to say this is my personal opinion. May not be correct.
Tony? Mhm. Okay, let me pick up the next comment before the question. There is a comment from Carl Mullins, and he says, "Love the AI healthcare example, Tony. Really useful. Automating this and joining the dots in healthcare and healthcare insurance in the UK would be amazing." Well, maybe something for the government to ponder about. Next question is from Soma Kurada, and Soma, I suppose I can't see the picture, so I don't know. With finance domain being very risky in terms of being able to take correct decisions and also explainable AI still being under research, how do we deal with AI in fintech domain? And I would extend that question for you guys. So where we've got that unexplainability of AI models, or possibly neural net models mostly, or deep learning models, how do we take it to, and I think my point of view is it's all about trust that you build with the customer or with the user. How do you go about it? How do you make sure that the end user or the business user is confident to be able to use it at the time when it's not explainable? Who wants to go first?
I can have a go.
Yeah,
So
go.
I think um, I've addressed this earlier, but I'll re-emphasize again. I think technology is moving very fast, especially in this space, and so it's important to stay up to date. And your machine learning or deep learning models, for instance, will get updated. If you don't, if you're using the old technologies, you're going to be suboptimal and you're going to have more challenges. And where we're going with deep neural nets now, with transformers with self-attention, where you can monitor the self-attention mechanism, where you can add additional lines of code for better interpretability, where we're going with things like liquid neural networks, which is a new area, but has been shown to work effectively with autonomous vehicles in a demo by researchers, and because they're sparse and they also offer causal inference. Recent research from MIT, whereby the neural network is actually explaining itself through diagrammatically through images, its decision making, and will switch on and off nodes which are making good decisions versus those that are making bad decisions. Financial institutions need to be aware of the latest research and technologies and be making sure they're using those relevant, up-to-date technologies, not the things from 3-4 years ago, like which had more of these challenges. So it isn't. You don't go and invest in AI technology like with anything else, and then don't update it and maintain it. You have to maintain it and update it for the advances. It's an area of R&D, and so even though the banks perhaps won't be as innovative on R&D as compared to startups, or in particular the tech majors in Silicon Valley, they can still take a lot of those technologies because a lot of them are open source. There's really good documentation out there, and adopt them. So we have much better, we haven't fully self-explainability, but we've gone a long way there, or much further than where we were 2 to 3 years ago. So again, make sure you're using up-to-date techniques like the transformers with self-attention mechanism, like the explore liquid neural policies and neural circuit policies, explore the things that are giving, or the latest research from MIT, where the neural network's actually explaining itself. We also have concept whitening for convolutional neural networks, if you're using it for face detection, which goes through explaining how the end-to-end, how the decision-making is working through the neural network. So yeah, and that area is going to keep on accelerating over the next 2 to 3 years. So make sure that you're up to date with the R&D.
Good stuff. I think that explains it all. Let me move to the next question. Thank you for that, Imtiaz. That was very well. If there is a white paper that you want to drop in, please drop it into the comment section, Imtiaz, at some point in time when you've got time, so that people can have a read. It's our duty, I would imagine, and I think to educate the world, as we are responsible, in my view. Anyways, let's go to the next question. Elliot Amal says insurance and healthcare is driven by automation with AI and IoT. Okay. There's a question from Mike. I'll take that again. Mike Nash. He says, do you think that explainable AI accelerate AI further in higher adoption? I would go back to Imtiaz.
Yeah. So again, absolutely. The more explainable and transparent we make AI, as both Utpal and Tony have said as well, and indeed yourself, Shalindra, the more we can extend it across the industry. So increasingly, financial institutions need to make sure they're using the latest R&D, the latest technologies that have the better transparency, and that gives trust and reliability. So the answer in short would be yes.
Good stuff.
Yeah, just to add, if you allow me,
Yeah,
Shailendra,
sure. Well,
just to add what Imtiaz has told, because he has explained, I think pretty clearly all those things. So in financial sectors, especially if you look at AI, all for a customer, AI almost used to be invisible, right? Because AI is working in the behind the scene. And here, when it comes to explainability, it is, of course, the model, the algorithm that you are writing, but also data plays a major role here. Okay, what kind of data is being provided to train it, kind of thing. So I think bringing these two things together and actually bring about that kind of explainability into financial sector is really important. So I think, at least in India, it has not started in that way till now, but I am hoping that it will start very, very soon, wherein we'll be able to explain it. And probably we can extend it to customers also for their understanding in a simpler way or something like that. That when we are doing a credit risk assessment, what kind of mechanism, what kind of data points we are taking, what kind of models we are running, what kind of data we are giving for training, whether we're looking at the data is not biased and all those things. So I think it is going to be a very interesting thing once it comes to India, also in the financial sector.
good stuff. Um, yep, absolutely. Imtiaz, you've just gone dark because of the light at the back, just so you know. Okay,
You've
very
definitely
quickly take the next question. Um, and the next question is from, well, before that, Imtiaz, Mike said, good points, Imtiaz. Shruti Singh, she says, can you think of any technological sector where a great focus on AI than it now receives would be a significant step forward in terms of innovation? Tony, do you want to have a go at that? Mhm. Good stuff. Okay, let me move on quickly. Short of time. Um, Satya Upadhyay says, great insights, Utpal, on the seamless integration of backend with frontend and going and doing it in an agile fashion. Um, there is a question, there is a comment from Elliot Amal says, the fintech and other industries must neutralize the data before consuming by any intelligent systems. Okay, let's look at that. Mike has another question. He says, as more financial institutions are using AI throughout, do you think they will be looking at other technologies to lift the bar further? For example, quantum AI, mixed reality, edge 5G, 6G? My answer is yes. Anyone wants to have a go?
I think that ties into the conversation we were having earlier about the
Yep.
metaverse, the omniverse, etc., and edge computing. So yes, absolutely. The lightning fast changes coming over the next few years, far greater than the last 20 years.
Great stuff. Um, mhm. Okay. Mike has said, Yep, keep going, Tony. Sorry. Hmm, good stuff. I think we've answered this question. Do you think financial will go to metaverse? Of course, yes. We've answered that question. Let's move on. There is another question saying from a LinkedIn user. I don't know, the name has not come through. It says, "Don't you think with all the COVID situation, people felt quite isolated, and AI could be also a threat for an organization to build long-term client relationship? I still prefer to talk to a human and not a chatbot." That's up your way, Tony. What do you think? Good stuff. I think that LinkedIn user is Marco Cingarella, and Elliot actually answered or tried to answer that question or comment on that. Says Marco Cingarella, "I feel we need to augmented intelligence when we should have human in loop, however relevant to industries, which is AI plus human, as everyone else would say." Okay, very quickly, I think I would like to finish off with one question, and that is around. Uh, don't know what's going on. Okay, so one question that I wanted to ask you guys is around startups. So we mentioned that startups have been doing quite a good job as as they're building up a lot of AI kit. How do you see startups coping and working closely with what do you say with VCs, and how are they getting funded? What's going on there? So to build the ecosystem, what do you see in that space, Imtiaz?
Yeah, sure. And I give the example of Revolut. I used to, in the L39 accelerator, I used to sit next to them when they created the company. In fact, when there was just the two of them and they didn't even have any external funding. And then 5 years later, they're worth $38 billion, right? One of the fastest growing fintechs in the world, one of the most valuable fintechs in the world. That's a personal example that I saw them from inception to becoming a huge giant. So a lot of money is flowing into fintechs, and the fintechs have had the advantage of over the incumbents in that they've been able to innovate more quickly and perhaps start with new infrastructure, with new products rather than rely on the legacy ones. Having said that, I think we've probably been seeing, and Utpal might, I don't want to step on Utpal's toes, but more relationships between fintech and the banks and over specific products, be that, for example, KYC, know your customer, RegTech, and other areas where the banks have said, well, whilst we have our own AI programs, we won't necessarily be able to do everything ourselves, and therefore we may partner with certain fintechs to help us in certain areas. So I think it's not just an adversarial relationship between fintechs and banks, it's also in some cases a collaborative one. But I think what it has done is to probably put the banks on toes to realize that if they're not updating and being relevant to the customer um, in terms of their own digital programs and digital infrastructures, then fintechs will, take away some of their customers. So I think that's probably been key drivers. And again, a lot of the adoption by fintechs have been over things like payment systems, reg tech that was mentioned, etc. And AI increasingly plays a big role across all of those.
Good stuff. Anyone else wants to add on to that?
Yeah. So, Shailendra, if you may.
Yep, go on, go on.
Yeah. So,
Utpal?
yes. So I think yes. What Imtiaz said is absolutely true. And I'll talk a little bit on the Indian context, how it is happening here. So because as I am associated with a lot of startups also here, like mentoring them or helping them wherever possible. So actually, startups are doing brilliant things. Okay, probably because of a not that mature VC system here. Many of the startups are dying up or kind of they're not getting the adequate support in terms of, but technology wise, concept wise, many of the startups here in India are doing brilliant work. So that's what I can say. May it be in the areas of payments because that is a very hot area. Then coming to the other area like the merchant acquisition part. Okay, so they are also uh, today you see some of the brilliant solutions even in NPA analytics, okay, non-performing assets analytics on those areas, and also regulatory areas, and of course the chatbot building platforms or platforms who are building lightweight channels, right? Like chatbots, WhatsApp banking, voice banking kind of thing, and providing actual transactions, banking transactions in those channels. So these startups, these fintechs are coming up, okay, and they're doing brilliant work. But here, I think we require a very mature VC system, ecosystem, basically to support these startups. We can choose those startups and help them. Probably, of course, one is financially, but the other part, what I can see is basically be part of their journey, be part
Yep.
of their vision, right? So that is very, very important. And I can see there are two TV shows now happening in India, although it is not very not for the technical startups, although some of the technical startups are coming. So one is, of course, the Shark Tank. The Shark Tank is now there in India also. And there is another show which has started, Horse Stable. So it is also like funding this tech startups and all those things. And the startups along with academia, like IITs here, okay, or the good universities are, I'm telling Shailendra, are doing really brilliant work. Probably that has not got that media hype or popularity across the globe, but Indian startups in this area are doing brilliant works, that I can say.
Good stuff. Tony, do you want to add or should I move on to the next question? There is one question which is itching me. Good stuff. Finally, I'll take this question and finish it off. Mike asks, many VCs are investing in companies with AI. Do you think this will continue for the next 5 years? What do you think? Let's take yes and no to this. Imtiaz,
Yes.
yes or no?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think
Good stuff. Yes. Imtiaz.
Yes, and you see, the majority of startups don't make it, and the VCs have known that. And that's not a reason to not invest in them, because then investments wouldn't occur. We wouldn't have Apples and Googles of this world. So for every Apple or Google, there is the vast majority fail, right? And that's the concept of portfolio investing by VCs. It's very high risk. But then when the returns, when a company does make it, are huge. So I gave the example of Revolut, worth valued at 38 billion. Now you can argue whether or not you believe that valuation is justified or not. But at the end of the day, there's a marketplace with sophisticated investors who've made that decision. You know, these are not amateur investors. So ultimately, it will continue. I think. Yes, there will need to be there'll probably be increased focus on tangibility of the business and access to data. That, like 3-4 years ago, the investment in AI was, hey, you've got an AI startup, great, you've got an algorithm, here, have a big check. For example, autonomous driving startups. I've got a convolutional neural network, here you go, have a check of 8 million, right? And then they couldn't really scale. So yes, scalability is key. However, you know, the opportunities are going to change it as well. So as we were talking about, maybe the next wave will be around AI startups and fintech with IoT, fintech and ESG, which is some of what I do, and fintech and the metaverse, which is also what I do because I'm in the overlap space. So I think that the underlying areas will change. However, investment will continue.
Good stuff. Utpal, what do you think?
Yes, my answer will be yes. I'm hoping so. And through your program, Shailendra, I would request this is to continue investing, at least in Indian context, okay? Because if you look at the market size, it's a huge market size, India, and it is one of the most open and democratic market of the world, okay? And if you look at the market affinity also, okay, there is a huge affinity. And in AI area, not only in the financial sectors, but if we club together all sectors, we are just scratching the surface. Okay, there are only few applications or solutions that we have built. Okay, and there is a huge scope. So through your program, I would request VCs, whether it is angel or kind of venture, yes, please do invest. There are huge opportunities.
Good stuff. Thank you, guys. There are lots of questions, but I'll have to pause. And we've already gone over time significantly. Anyways, so guys, thank you very much. It was a huge show. There were more than 100 people watching at a point in time on LinkedIn only, and there are other channels also, and I don't actually have a clue of what was going on where. But this was excellent. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Utpal. Thank you, Imtiaz. You guys did a great job. My job is to educate and pass it on to the audience and explain to them what AI is, and that's what we're trying to do. And thank you very much for taking time out and from your busy schedules. You guys are busy people and have taken time out. It's like I'm really, really thankful to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, and I'll see you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so guys, that was Tony, Imtiaz, and Utpal from UK and India, and I'm from Sydney at 9:46. That went very well. That was long, but loved it. The questions were great. You guys rocked. Great questions that came through you. Well, very engaging, very entertaining. I think we got around about 95 questions still going on. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you once again next week, possibly with a different industry. I think we mentioned metaverse, so maybe it is metaverse next week. Same time, same place. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate you taking time out. Thank you, and bye now.